brother of theirs, I think we have life. But it's also, there's a mistake here that's been made by Jacob, hasn't there? What's the problem? What's the problem with favoritism? Not good. When you have children, if you have one that's a favorite over the rest, how are the rest going to feel? They're not going to like it. They're going to feel hurt, rejected. They're going to feel inadequate. And it may come out as hatefulness. It may come out that way. It's not right, but it may come out that way. Yeah, and they kind of play that too, don't they? And Joseph seems to do that somewhat. He seems to have a pretty good character in the scriptures, but there are some problems that you could see. Maybe there might be a little bit of pride there, a little bit of arrogance. Joseph seems to relish the fact that he is a favorite of his father's, seems to anyway, and maybe someone might say, well, that's only to be expected, but still it's not the right attitude to have. Again, it's hard to say things, and I don't want to disparage any Bible character at all, especially without any reason to. The scriptures don't point out any serious or terrible flaws with Joseph's character. Maybe it's only natural that he would react or act the way he does. But you can see what the problem is here. The favoritism of Jacob over the rest of his brothers is going to make for a situation that's going to be very unpleasant. Although at the same time, as unpleasant as this is, it's going to also provide the solution for their survival in the very near future. So that's something to consider as well. God can take even a bad situation and turn it on its ear and make things work out for good. So that's something to be remembered. Now, verse 5 says, "And Joseph dreamed a dream, and he told it to his brethren, and they hated him yet the more." Dreams. There are lots of thoughts that we have about dreams, and I've had some weird dreams. You've had some weird dreams, I'm sure. Some of those dreams almost seem real to you. What do they mean? Well, I would say the vast majority of them really are just manifestations of our subconscious mind. However, there were instances in the Old Testament, perhaps some in the New even, that God communicated to people through their dreams. How that worked exactly, I don't know. But I do believe this. I believe that when we wake from a dream, we realize it was a dream. We know that was different, that was something that didn't actually occur. The events that we experienced in our dream did not actually occur. We know that. We know that this is awake and this is asleep. We know that this is over here is reality and over here is something that we dreamed about. And we know it's different. But I think that there was probably something that these people experienced to tell them that this was more than just a dream. And I think Joseph was this way as well as Jacob. We'll talk about Jacob a little bit too. He's going to understand and interpret the dreams as well that Joseph has, and rightfully so. He's going to rebuke his son, but at the same time, he's going to take note of it because he also had dreams as well, where God manifested himself through the dreams. But the brethren hated Joseph all the more when they heard the dream. And he said unto them, Hear I pray you this dream which I have dreamed. For behold, we were binding sheaves in the field. Lo, my sheaf arose and stood upright. And behold, your sheaves stood round about and made obeisance to my sheaf. Now, that's the King James. Basically, what that's saying is, they were shepherds, but they were also farmers. And they were binding sheaves of grain in the field. Well, Joseph got his all bound up, and his brethren got their sheaves bound up. He set his sheaf up, and it stood upright, tall, and straight, and all the other sheaves bowed down toward his sheaf. His was in the center, and they all bowed down, talking about his brother's sheaves. Now, what did they think that this meant? Pretty obvious, huh? Right, it's a prediction. It's a prediction of something that's about to happen. Yeah, and this is, you guys are going to bow down to me. Did that ever come true, by the way? Just, we're jumping ahead a little bit here. It did, didn't it? Okay. So what this is God communicating through the dream to Joseph and to Joseph's brethren. This is being done for a purpose. They're going to be making some horrible mistakes here in the very near future, and they're going to realize it some years later. But this is revealed to them so that they'll understand that this was all from God, that everything that happened was under God's control. And it was for because God was merciful to them, toward the children of Jacob, Israel, all right, and his preservation of their seed, because that's the promise all the way back to Abraham, that his seed would be the blessing of the entire world. Okay, and his brethren said to him, shalt thou indeed reign over us, or shalt thou indeed have dominion over us? And they hated him yet the more for his dreams and for his words. So you have Joseph here dreaming dreams. They hate him for his dreams, but then also for his words. I think Joseph kind of rode this a little bit, didn't he? As he spoke to them about them, not only did he tell them the dreams, but he told them what he thought they meant. And that would have been a cause for consternation as far as his brethren were concerned. Yes, Bob. Right, right. Wasn't the best thing to do, was now again, God's in control of this whole situation and he's going to work it out for the good. But you wonder, would Joseph have been a little wiser to keep the dream to himself instead of saying something, knowing what it means? I mean, it's obvious what it means, right? Your sheaves are going to bow down to my sheaf. Now, if that's not enough, he's going to dream another dream instead of say the same thing and maybe even a little more. Ron, you had your hand up too. Mm-hmm. And that's a good point. It's not that God caused them to make these errors or these mistakes. God used them and allowed those errors to work out. He was able to manipulate things behind the scenes and make things better for them in the future. They're going to be preserved during this terrible worldwide famine. They're going to be blessed completely so that they don't have any water, any need anymore because of Joseph and what he does. And you have to see how God is in control here, because the events, all the things and how they unfold. And you have Joseph down in Egypt and all the things that happen to get him in this position where he's able to help them. That just doesn't happen. It just doesn't happen that way. A man sold as a slave becomes second in power to the Pharaoh himself in Egypt, and able to help his family out in ways that they couldn't possibly imagine. This is definitely the hand of God. There's no question that this was God's working of this plan. But again, not that God caused them or encouraged them to make these mistakes. Whether Joseph telling the dream or dwelling on the different things that he talked about in the dreams, and the anger of his brethren, the hatred of his brethren, and their actions because of that hatred, that's not something God caused them to do. And yet he still used the situation and was able to work things around for good. And that's something we have to remember. Life's not always easy, is it? And things happen that we just don't understand, and we might even ask God why. We might question God. And I think he understands when we do, but we have to always trust him no matter what. He'll tell us basically, be still and know that I'm God. And that's the way we need to be. We need to understand that these situations are under his control. Daryl?
Earlier when they said, here comes that dream. Remember that wasn't a compliment.
Right. Yeah, that's going to happen here in a few verses. Right. They're calling him the dreamer, but that's not a good nickname. That's a term of derision as far as they're concerned. Uh, they hate him with a passion, and they say, "Oh boy, here comes the dreamer." And that's what we're going to see this in a few more verses here, where he goes out to check on them at the request of his father. Ron, do you have a comment? Right. Don't blame God for the problems. Uh, the reminder, the go-to verse is in James, where he tells us that every good gift, every perfect gift comes from God. Commit that to memory. Every good gift comes from God. Every perfect gift comes from God. And when he makes a promise, he doesn't go back on it. It says there's no variableness in him. There's neither a shadow of turning. Not like a man who, when he turns, he casts a shadow and the shadow moves with him. God doesn't cast a shadow. He's not a physical human being. He's a person that's eternal in spirit. And when he says something, then we can confirm it's going to be true.
When he speaks of chastisement in Hebrews,
Mhm.
that's a good thing.
Yes, it is. We don't always perceive it as such. Our way of looking at things when things are unpleasant, we look at them as being bad or evil. And even the Bible says that thing. God talks about doing evil to certain people, and that doesn't mean that God did something that was wicked or sinful. It means that what He did to those people didn't seem good to them; it seemed evil. Okay, and that's the way we need to understand that. It's not that God does evil; it's just that evil itself, what we perceive as being evil, not always is evil. Chastening from the Lord, for example, it's not pleasant. The Hebrew writer reminds us, is no chastening is for the present something that is pleasant to us, but afterward it yields the peaceable fruit of righteousness. It's still good for us, isn't it? And it's still a good and perfect gift from God. We just don't always recognize it as such, but it is a good thing. And that's what we need to train our minds to understand. God blesses us. Even when it's not pleasant, He's still blessing us. Okay, Ron?
In good times, all human nature. In good times, things are really good. You do God in prayer. We may not be as humble
Mm-hmm.
when we're having church, when we're having that time. We do God a lot more humble, I believe.
I think so. It's through good times when things are going well. It's a good time to be thankful. All right, be thankful for what you've received, and don't forget about those things. And it's easy to do. It's easy to do, and I dare say there's so many blessings, and I'm humbled when I go to God in prayer, thanking God for the blessings I've received. So many that I may not even be aware of. And you try to acknowledge that before God. And when things are going good, be grateful, be thankful. Then when the things are going bad, we tend to focus more in on requests and requests for help from God. Then we focus in a little bit more. But good times that's not bad to go through good times, right? But when you go through good times and times of blessing, be thankful for those things. And that'll prepare you more for those bad times. Steve?
I think another thing that a lot of people see in their life, how people are born with disability and all that. Like myself, I have epilepsy and I have mental health problems. That's just the way you're born. You got to look at something that happens in your life that's good for you and then enjoy that instead of looking at something that happened in your life that was bad.
Right, and even bad things can work out to be a blessing. Things that seem to be bad, God can work things out. Just like here, He's going to work things out to preserve the family here. Bob?
I was going to say what was said to Paul, my grace is sufficient for you.
Yes.
If you want something done, it's not going to be done. Your
Right.
grace is always there.
Right. You can't hardly read that without really feeling a lot of sympathy for Paul and what he's saying. Look, I want to serve you. I want to preach. He's not asking for something that's really selfish so much. I could do a much better job for you if this thorn in the flesh were removed. And Jesus basically tells him, no, my grace is sufficient for you. My strength's perfect, made perfect in weakness. So you're going to have, in other words, the way he's wording this is, Paul, this thorn is here to stay. You're going to have this, and you need it. There's a reason for it. And Paul recognized that too, because of the abundance of the revelations he received. He needed something to humble him. And so he says, I'll glory in my infirmities then. And that's quite an attitude to have. You have to you have to admire Paul for doing that. It's not easy to do. When you're in pain, when you're suffering. And I don't know what the thorn was, but I do know what thorns do. I know that the thorn is a metaphor. I don't think it's a literal thorn, it's a metaphor, but thorns are painful. They're painful. Whatever it is that Paul had, it was a painful thing. This thorn in the flesh. Some said it had to do with his eyesight, and he does seem to hint at that, especially in the book of Galatians. But whatever it was a painful malady that he wanted to have removed, and Jesus, without any doubt, had the ability to remove it. But instead, he said, no, you need this, Paul. You're going to have this. So I'm not taking it away. You need it, and my strength is made perfect in weakness. You're going to be a better man because of it, so just tolerate it, bear under it. And so Paul said, I will. I'll glory in my infirmities then. But you got to have sympathy for Paul. Who wants a thorn in the flesh? Nobody does. Nobody wants a pain like that. But we have to understand that even things that may seem to be bad for us can work out for good. And Paul never accuses God, does he? He calls it a thorn in the flesh, and then he calls it a messenger from Satan. So the pain, the bad part of it, Paul acknowledged where it came from. It came from Satan. Now, God allowed Satan to do it, but it was Satan. So the good gift, the perfect gift, Paul acknowledges comes from God. But the messenger was from Satan. This thorn in the flesh that Paul was dealing with. This was a messenger from Satan. We need to recognize that too. If it's an evil thing, if it's a bad thing, it's not from God. The good gifts come from God. That's what we need to understand. He may allow Satan to do things, but that doesn't mean God's responsible for doing them. But he will work the thing out so that we can get through, we can persevere through it. Okay, well, Joseph's not done dreaming, though, is he? He says, and he dreamed yet another dream and told it to his brethren. He said, behold, I have dreamed a dream more. Behold, the sun and the moon and the 11 stars made obeisance to me. Okay, so this is, without a doubt, God is even being more clear here. It's not only is it going to be the 11 brothers of Joseph who are going to serve him, but also his mother and father. The sun and the moon, right? Sun and the moon and 11 stars. Well, Rachel is gone at this time, as we know. She died giving birth to Benjamin. But what does this mean? How could Rachel bow down before him? That's his mother, right? Because and Jacob's going to see this. Shall I and my mother and my brethren come and bow down before you? How could Rachel bow down if she's dead at this time? Well, metaphorically speaking, she would through Benjamin and all the rest of them. These are all the children of Jacob and Leah, Rachel, and the two handmaids. They're all going to bow down, the entire family. So you got father, mother, and 11 brothers. All right, these are all going to bow down to Joseph someday. We're going to see this happen. They're going to depend on him. Rachel, although she's gone, her progeny through Joseph and Benjamin still lives on. So you see how this is going to work out. So that's why this is said. In fact, Jacob's going to acknowledge this. He told it to his father and to his brethren, and his father rebuked him. Now, on one hand, Jacob rebukes his son for telling them about this dream. All right, and he said unto him, what is this dream that thou hast dreamed? Shall I and thy mother and thy brethren indeed come to bow down ourselves to thee to the earth? We're going to bow down to the earth because of you? Is this right? So he's cautioning him, he's rebuking him. You shouldn't be saying these kinds of things. That's on one hand. On the other hand, his brethren envied him, but his father observed the saying. So on one hand, he rebukes him. Joseph, don't say these things. On the other hand, does Joseph have any reason to wonder about these dreams? Well, let's back up to Genesis 28. Who dreamed a dream there? Who saw the ladder going up into heaven and angels ascending and descending on it? A place called Luz, and he renamed it Bethel, the house of God. Jacob dreamed that dream, didn't he? Okay. So dreams can be a means of God communicating, and that's what God is doing here. He is communicating through Joseph what's going to happen. Now, because he reveals these things to his brethren, it's setting things up for them to not be very pleasant, but it is the way God is going to work things out to preserve their lives, to save them. Okay, and his brethren went to feed their father's flock in Shechem. Shechem is about 50 miles away from Hebron, the valley of Hebron, where Jacob and his family are now centered. So they're about 50 miles away. That's a pretty good journey. That's a long ways off. So they're checking on their flocks in Shechem. And Israel, that is Jacob, said unto Joseph, do not thy brethren feed the flock in Shechem? Come, and I will send thee unto them. And he said, here am I. Boy, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree, does it? Abraham was saying that all the time. Here am I, here am I. And Isaac says, here am I. Jacob says, here am I. Now even Joseph. So apparently this is carrying on throughout generations. Here am I. And he said to him, go, I pray thee, see whether it be well with thy brethren and well with the flocks, and bring me word again. So he sent him out of the vale of Hebron. Again, that's where they were centered. And he came to Shechem. Okay, you remember they couldn't dwell near Shechem for what reason? Okay, because of what Simeon and Levi did to the men of that place. In fact, Shechem was the name of the son of Hamor, who fell in love with Dinah. Now, he forced himself on Dinah, but to his credit, he not only did this, he was wrong in what he did, of course, but he also loved her too. It says his soul was knit to her, and he wanted to make her his wife. And so at least he had that good intention about it. Although there were ulterior motives, as we discussed, they were going to intermarry with Jacob and his family, and they said all their possessions will be ours. So they had a selfish motive in it as well, including Shechem. But he did love Dinah. So the men, of course, agreed. They said, okay, we'll do that, but you have to be circumcised. So they agreed to it. And on the third day, when they were sore, Simeon and Levi came in with the sword and killed all the men. And this was a despicable act. There's no doubt about this. Jacob rebuked them for this, and he said, I'm going to stink in the nostrils of the inhabitants of the land because of this. Nevertheless, God still protected Jacob. And now that he's dwelling in Hebron, you've got the sons of Jacob that are watching over the flocks now down here in Shechem. So at Shechem, and Jacob might be concerned because of this. There they are down at Shechem watching over the flocks. And this is the one place where there's got to be a lot of animosity toward them. This is the one place in the land of Canaan that you know they're not going to like them. So that may be the reason why Joseph is going to be sent, because he's wondering about it. He's concerned about them. We do know that they were all there. All right, and a certain man found him. And behold, he was wandering in the field, and the man asked him, saying, what seekest thou? We're not told who this man is. Many of the Jewish rabbis believe this to be an angel in the form of a man who is sent there to guide Joseph. Maybe he is, but he's just simply called a man here in our text. And he said, I seek my brethren. Tell me, I pray thee, where they feed their flocks. I'm looking. Here I am in Shechem, and I can't find them. Maybe he's out in the field. It says he's just kind of wandering in the field. That might be the idea of wandering, is that he's out there looking around. Maybe he's looking for signs. Have there been any sheep here? If sheep are grazing in a field, they don't leave a lot. They don't leave a lot, do they? Cattle will graze and they'll leave some. sheep will pull up the roots and eat everything. All right. So if they've been through here, there should be a good indication that the sheep have been here, the flocks, the goats, and the sheep that they have brought through here. So he may be just wandering through the field looking around for his brethren. And this man says, what are you looking for? Oh, I'm looking for my brethren. They're keeping the sheep. You know where they might be. And apparently they understand which shepherds he's talking about. And the man said, they are departed hence, for I heard them say, let us go to Dothan. And Joseph went after his brethren and found them in Dothan. Okay, so a little bit, about 13 miles north of Shechem is where the city of Dothan, where the land of Dothan is. And so he had to go a little bit further, but he finds his brethren just like the man said. Now it says, I heard them say this. Now, whether they were keeping the flocks and he just happened to be passing by, I heard them say, we're going to Dothan, or whether this was indeed an angel of the Lord who heard them say this. We don't know. It doesn't really tell us here, so we can't really say for sure. But it seems rather fortuitous that there's a man that happens to be there where Joseph needs him to guide him along his way, to get him where he needs to go. Verse 18 says, and when they saw him afar off, even before he came near unto them, they conspired against him to slay him. So the brethren see him coming a long ways off. Oh, here he comes. How did they know it was Joseph a long ways off? Oh, that coat of many colors. All right. Look, here comes old flag boy. You know, all them different colors. You know, we can see him a mile away. Here he comes. And they're conspiring to kill him. They're going to put him to death. All right. And they said to one another, behold, this dreamer cometh. Here comes the dreamer. That was not a compliment, was it? That was not a compliment. There are numerous passages of scripture that we can read in the Old and New Testament as far as dreams go. In fact, God even says about dreams in Deuteronomy chapter 13, if there arises a prophet among you, a dreamer of dreams, he gives you a sign or a wonder, and the sign of wonder comes to pass. All right, that sounds like, okay, he must be a real prophet. But the thing which he spoke to you, saying, let us go after other gods, which ye have not known, and let us serve them, you shall not listen to the words of this prophet or that dreamer of dreams, for the Lord your God is testing you. That's a scary thought. There are other passages that tell us, well, if the prophet says it and it comes true, then listen to him, he's a prophet. But this prophet says if he tells you something you know to be false, like, let's go after other gods, and the sign or the wonder he uses to prove that even seems to come true, don't listen to him. You know it's false. God's testing your faithfulness, your resolve. So be careful about dreams. Be careful. When someone tells you, well, I've dreamed a dream today. First of all, we don't live in the age of miracles. We don't live in the age of revelation. All of the revelation, and I don't mean just the book of Revelation, I'm talking about all of what God has revealed in God's word. What else needs to be revealed to us? Nothing. Nothing else. The next time God reveals anything other than what we have right here, it's going to be the last day. That's it. Not the last days. We're living in those. But on the last day when Jesus is revealed from heaven, that's the only other thing God's going to reveal to us. Everything else is right here. All that we need that pertain to life and godliness, we're told, are given to us here. Peter, the apostle, reminds us of that. He's given us all things that pertain to life and godliness. Bob?
I would see in verse 13, once given for all time.
Right. And that which is perfect. In 1 Corinthians 13, and I believe Jude 7 that you might be referring to there too, Bob, the idea that the faith was once delivered unto the saints, once for all time, and the perfect tense in the Greek, means that it was a small window of time in which God revealed the New Testament. And then when that window closed, that's it. That's it. There are no more revelations. So someone says, well, I dreamed a dream. I think God was trying to tell us something. Should we believe that? No. Because anything that if I dream a dream and I tell you I think God was communicating this, it's not going to, if it adds to this, then I'm adding to God's word. If it takes away from it, then I'm taking away from God's word, right? No, don't listen to dreams today. We don't live in that age anymore. There, God did in the past communicate through dreams. He did through Joseph here. All right, but today, God doesn't do that. Not any longer. Not any longer. Today, we have the inspired word to fall back on. God's not going to reveal any more to us. Okay, Daryl.
Thinking if this guy were out there wandering around in the field, or an angel, he would have already known where these people were. Maybe he was asking this guy to see how honest he was.
Maybe. Yeah, again, the scriptures don't say who he was, just says he was a man. Jewish tradition holds that he was an angel, but yeah, Jewish tradition can be right, it can be wrong. Just straight from the text, we don't have any indication he was anything but a man. Except for the one thing that is pretty fortuitous, he happens to be in the one place that Joseph needs him when he needs him the most. Yeah, he's come to Shechem looking for his brethren and their flocks, and he's there, but he hasn't found them. And so here's a man who points him in the right direction. You're close, but you're still 13 miles away. You got to go to Dothan. And so Joseph, of course, goes to find his brethren there. Again, we don't know. Was this an angel? Maybe, but we're not told. We just don't know for sure. So they call him the dreamer. Here comes the dreamer. They saw him afar off with the coat of many colors, of course. And they said, "Come now, therefore, let us slay him and cast him into some pit. And we will say, some evil beast has devoured him. We shall see what will become of his dreams." You know, when God does send a message and you try to thwart that message, you're doomed to fail, aren't you? I think even Isaac tried to do that, didn't he? He said to Esau, "Quick, go out and get me some venison and prepare it and bring it in, and I'm going to bless you." Did he not know? Did he not know that the older would serve the younger? I'm sure that Rebekah told him at some point about this, that when she went and inquired of the Lord about this, he said, "There are two peoples in your womb, and the oldest, Esau, was going to be a servant of the younger," okay, which is Jacob. Did he try to maybe circumvent, to thwart God's will here? I don't know. Maybe he thought, because Esau was his favorite, he wanted to bless him and give him that, which is really, the blessing is basically the birthright, isn't it? You're going to be blessed with the greater blessing. That's like the oldest son would receive the double portion and under the law of Moses, you see. So here you have that situation that you try to circumvent God's will and make it not happen. Let's go fast forward a few years. You remember when the Pharisees and the high priest, they wanted to put Jesus to death, and they said, "But we're not going to do it on the feast day, because it wouldn't be wise. That'll upset the people too much. So we're not going to kill him on the feast day." What day did they kill him on? Why? Because God willed it to be so. Jesus even prophesied that the Passover is drawing nigh and the Son of Man is going to be betrayed and he's going to be crucified on the cross on the Passover. The Son of God made that prediction. Then Caiaphas, the high priest, said, "We're not going to do this on the feast day." Whose will won out? You see, when you try to thwart God's plans, you can't win. You can't win. No matter whether you'd like to see it go another way or not, doesn't matter. God says this is the way it's going to come about. It's the way it's going to come about. Okay, Ron? No. You can't hide from Jonah. Tried to do that, didn't he? I always remember the story of Jonah, how he thought, well, I'll I'll just go the opposite direction, get on a boat and get out to sea, get as far away from God as I possibly can get. How'd that work out for him? That was a bad mistake. All right. I can't imagine anything more disgusting, more frightening than to be in the belly of a fish for 3 days and nights. We just kind of pass over. We read that and we think, and we got these pictures, cartoon pictures in our mind where there's a guy building a little fire there and he's sitting there warming himself in the whale's belly, or in, like Pinocchio, the big old whale monstro. It's kind of like a play on Jonah and the whale, or Jonah and the great fish. And you see Geppetto sitting there warming his hands over a fire, That's not the way it was. That's not the way it was. Remember, he described feeling seaweed all around his face. And I'm sure that the smell of it was horrible. And to be inside the digestive tract of a giant sea creature, the acids, can you imagine how that must have felt as they begin to digest you alive? In the dark, okay? If you're even the slightest bit claustrophobic, that's got to make you a little nervous to even think about. Yeah. Yeah, that's not something you want to experience, okay? But that's, it didn't work out too well for Jonah trying to hide from God or circumvent his will. Okay, so they're going to put him to death. We'll see what will become of his dreams. And Reuben heard it. Now, Reuben's done some dumb things, hasn't he? Okay, one thing he seems to be obsessed with, he finds the mandrakes. The mandrakes, from what we read or understand, are like an aphrodisiac. And so Rachel, of course, desires the mandrakes. And so that's how Leah is able to sleep with Jacob that night. She hires Jacob with her son's mandrakes. So that's something there kind of makes you wonder. You have Reuben, who also lays with his father's concubine, which that's not a good thing either. So it's kind of refreshing today to read about Reuben in a good light. All right, Reuben's the firstborn of Jacob. He kind of loses his birthright because of his indiscretions. So do Simeon and Levi because of their discretions. Those are the next two in line, and that's why the birthright seems to fall to Judah, the fourthborn. All right. But Reuben here does something that's really kind of commendable. All right. Reuben heard it, and he delivered him out of their hands and said, let us not kill him. Let's not kill him. Okay, he's our brother. Whether you like him or not. I'm not saying here that Reuben was lily white in this and says, yeah, but he's our brother. We love him. I don't think he really was a lover of Joseph. But I think he loved and respected his father. And he realized something here, being the firstborn, knowing something about his father. Because you're going to see that there's a reference to delivering him to his father. So the concern is not so much for Joseph, but for Jacob. And Reuben said unto them, shed no blood, but cast him into this pit that is in the wilderness, and lay no hand upon him, that he might rid him out of their hands to deliver him to his father again. Reuben may not have liked Joseph very much, but he loved his father, didn't want to see his father go through the hurt and the suffering. And knowing what would happen if his brethren were to kill Joseph, he not only would lose Joseph, he would lose all of his sons then, wouldn't he? Really. What happened when Adam and Eve lost Abel? Did they still have Cain? They didn't have Cain. Cain was a fugitive and a vagabond from that day forward. They disowned Cain. They couldn't think of Cain as their son anymore because Cain murdered their other son. They lost both of them that day. Jacob would have lost all of his sons if they had conspired to kill Joseph like this and carried through with it. Ron?
I wonder about, Jacob had love of God there. I wonder about his kids.
Yeah, they don't seem to have a lot of God-fearing attitude about them, do they? That's something they're going to have to have some changes. And I think some of those changes will come about because of the events that God has planned here. Those changes may come about. We see a big change in them the next time they see their brother after all this. There's a big change in their attitude when Joseph finally reconciles with his brethren. There's a big change over them. And I think that they have a little more of an understanding of God now at that point. But at this point, they seem to be pretty godless even. They seem to be really kind of wicked. With the exception here of Reuben, seems to have some kind of semblance of what's right and what's wrong. We shouldn't do this. We shouldn't kill our brother. And it came to pass when Joseph was coming to his brethren that they stripped Joseph out of his coat of many colors that was on him. That's how we know Joseph was wearing the coat, and that's why they could see him afar off. And they took him and cast him into a pit, and the pit was empty. There was no water in it. Okay, so that's that kind of a description here. It seems to be a pit that was dug for a well, perhaps, but there was no water in it. There was no water, and they cast him into this pit. Now, I've seen some depictions of this pit where it was slimy and muddy, and that those are not accurate. There's one children's Bible, if you will, that shows Joseph in this pit, and it's sloppy wet, and disgusting. And I'm sure it was done this way to show how bad it was for Joseph's experience, especially trying to relate that to small children. But it's inaccurate. There was no water in this pit. It was dry. And that would be even worse yet. What if Joseph, from his screaming and hollering, got his throat so sore and parched from being down there in that pit? He wouldn't even have any water to soothe his throat, even if it was muddy water. Even if it was just muddy water, it'd be something. But there was no water in this pit. It was a dry hole. That's all it was. Probably a hand-dug well that didn't produce any water. And so this is where they throw him, down into this pit. I want you to notice something about the heartlessness of this whole act, of what they do. There was no water in it. There was no food in it, obviously. They just threw their brother down in there, stripping him out of his coat. And they sat down to eat bread. How heartless. How reprehensible is that action? Throw your brother into the pit, strip him out of his coat, his prized possession, his gift from his father, into a dry hole where there is no water to quench your thirst, and then sit down and eat bread. How do you do that? That's pretty wicked, isn't it? They were going to kill him. And Reuben kind of thought, well, this will be a little better. Let's cast him into the pit. And we do know that he wants to sneak around when they're not paying attention, get him out of the pit and send him back to Jacob. We do know that's what Reuben's intention was. And maybe he didn't really like Joseph all that much, but he didn't want to hurt his father. And that at least is admirable. That's at least one good thing about it. Okay, so they're eating bread, and they lifted up their eyes and looked, and behold, a company of Ishmaelites came from Gilead with their camels bearing spicery, balm, and myrrh, going to carry it down to Egypt. So Ishmael's descendants come onto the scene here. We have some of course, this is a few generations removed. So like Jacob now is a pretty large company. Esau is a pretty large company, as we've seen. Too large for them to be dwelling together in the land, so he goes to Mount Seir. Ishmael also seems to have been blessed, and now they're a company. They've become very nomadic. The Jews render this that they were simply Arabs, which they were. These are the descendants of Ishmael, and they were nomadic people. They just kind of wandered around and did a lot of trading with people. All right, and so Judah said to his brethren, what profit is it if we slay our brother and conceal his blood? Interesting that Judah is quoted here. There's no profit in this. If we slay our brother and conceal his blood or hide it, just like, we're going to kill him, but we're not going to let anybody know we did it. We're going to hide that fact. We're going to conceal his blood. But here's a better idea. Instead of kill him, he says, come, let us sell him to the Ishmaelites, and let not our hand be upon him, for he is our brother in our flesh. And his brethren were content. I said, no, we want to kill him, but we can't really kill him. That wouldn't be right. He's still our brother. Hey, I got an idea. Let's sell him. Sell him as a slave. Maybe they thought that would even be even better yet. If we kill him, he's done. He's dead. He's gone. But if we sell him as a slave, he's going to suffer for a long time. Maybe that was what they were thinking. Let's just sell him. We'll make some profit out of this deal too. Then there passed by Midianites, merchant men. So Midianites, Ishmaelites, oftentimes interchangeably used these terms. And they drew and lifted Joseph out of the pit, sold Joseph to the Ishmaelites for 20 pieces of silver, and they brought Joseph into Egypt. We need to stop there, I guess, because that's the second buzzer. People are coming in. But we'll pick up there in our study, Lord willing, on Wednesday evening.